eye on this system because it could have some effects on southeast Texas. Now, yesterday things looked a little scarier than today because yesterday many of our computer models were indicating we could have a direct hit here in southeast Texas. Since that time, a lot of our computer models, just about all of them, as a matter of fact, have pushed a little bit farther to the east, meaning we might not take a direct blow, but we could still have some effects from the system as we get into the weekend. So that is the reason why we're talking about this to you on Facebook Live this evening. Here's what we know at this time. Here's one big change that just happened within the last 30 minutes. Formation odds are now up to 90%. Not only is there a 90% chance of development over the next 5 days, there's a 90% chance of development over the next couple of days. Track uncertainty remains high until development occurs. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, the center of circulation is still on land. It can't develop tropically until it gets out over the warm water of the Gulf of Mexico. Water temperatures over in that area are in the middle and upper 80s right now, plenty warm enough for formation to occur. And the wind shear is also low to non-existent over the northeastern part of the Gulf of Mexico. So that particular part of the Gulf is very favorable for rapid development. And we think once that center makes it out over the Gulf, later on tonight and into tomorrow, some rapid intensification could occur. We could be looking at a tropical depression, maybe even a tropical storm by this time tomorrow evening. Hurricane hunters are scheduled to fly through the system tomorrow afternoon. The latest computer models, as I was saying just a little while ago, now showing heavier rainfall to the east of Texas, but we don't want to completely let our guard down because these computer models have a tendency of waffling back and forth this far away from actual landfall time. So here's that center of circulation as far as the National Hurricane Center sees it, still on land, still just southwest of Tallahassee. Notice how we don't really have thunderstorms wrapping around that center. And also notice how disorganized this system is. Most of these storms are actually occurring on land. And so this is basically what typically happens this time of year. You get development of these thunderstorms. So this is nothing out of the ordinary here and certainly nothing of a tropical nature. It's when this center gets out here that we're really going to be concerned about development. And we think that will happen overnight tonight and into tomorrow as well. So 90% chance over the next couple of days, 90% over the next 5 days. Here's the hashed area where we believe that development will occur. The change that has happened just within the last 45 minutes from the National Hurricane Center is that the western edge of this development area, this hatched area here, has been pushed a little bit farther to the east. If you recall earlier this evening, it was a little bit farther to the west. Now it's been pushed to the east, and that's basically an indication from the National Hurricane Center that the system has a better chance of developing east of us than, say, in the waters there off the upper Texas coast. Here is a look at the latest tropical computer models. Now, just yesterday, we were putting all 51 of the tropical computer models on this graphic. We thought we would simplify it today and put the more reliable models on here for you to look at. So when we do that, we see the farthest east this thing could make landfall, according to the computer models, is just around and just to the east of the New Orleans area. The farthest west, according to our latest computer models, that it can come in is still along the upper Texas coast over parts of Jefferson County. Now, if it comes in way over here near New Orleans, we probably won't have much of an effect on the system because we're going to be on the clean side. You typically get the highest surge, the heaviest rain, and the highest winds along the track and to the east of the track of a landfalling storm that's moving from south to north. So we think the worst of the weather will be east of us if the center comes in around New Orleans or to the east. However, if the center of the system comes in all the way out here and passes over, say, Port Arthur, Beaumont, then we would have a better chance of getting some wind. Then we might even see a little bit of a storm surge, and we certainly would have a better chance of getting some heavy rain. So it really just depends on whether center of circulation comes in. The problem is we don't know whether center is coming in because the center has not really even formed yet. We don't have a depression. We don't have thunderstorms wrapping around the center, and therefore we're very uncertain as far as where it's going to come in. For tomorrow, hurricane hunters are going to fly tomorrow afternoon. Low pressure that most likely develops tomorrow over the Gulf will begin to intensify as we get into Thursday, and then in the Friday through Sunday time frame, if it does come close enough to us, those will be the days when we might see some impacts from it. Now, just yesterday, our computer models were saying, well, Louisiana and the upper Texas coast were the favorite areas for landfall from this particular system. Now today, that has shifted farther to the east, and they're saying that the center of circulation will most likely come in either somewhere just east of New Orleans or as far west as about maybe the upper Texas coast there around the Port Arthur area. Why the big change? Well, yesterday the computer models were saying that there was going to be this huge dome of high pressure, a strong one sitting over northern Louisiana, southern parts of Arkansas. The tropical systems don't like to move directly towards high pressure because they're low pressure. They like to go around high pressure, and that would give it a better chance of making landfall southwest Louisiana, upper Texas coast. Today's computer models are saying that as we get towards landfall time later on this week and into this weekend, that area of high pressure is not going to be located over northern Louisiana or southern Arkansas. It's going to be located farther east over parts of Alabama. And they're also saying it's going to be a much weaker system. So that is the reason why the computer models have shifted farther to the east away from us. But again, the center has not made it over water. We still don't have a defined low-level circulation. We still don't have thunderstorms wrapping around that low-level circulation. And until we get that, until the computer models see that and get a fix on that particular situation, we're not going to be overly confident on where this thing is going to go. So we need to keep our antennas up. We'll know more as we get into tomorrow. If that center does go in farther east of us, the main area for thunderstorms is going to be farther to the east. Now, here's the European computer model. I want to show this one to you in particular because this particular model did a very good job for several storms in our past, including Tropical Storm Allison. If you recall what happened with the hurricane, it hit the East Coast. Tropical Storm Sandy, it did an extraordinary job with that, and that was an extremely difficult storm to forecast. And so this is one of the computer models that we have a lot of high confidence with. It says as we get into tomorrow morning, that center of circulation is going to be located right there, and we're going to start to see thunderstorms develop around it. It is saying that by tomorrow evening, that center of circulation is going to quickly move southwest, be due south there of about Pensacola, Florida, out in parts of the Gulf of Mexico with even more thunderstorms wrapping around its center. It's saying that 24 hours after that, as we get into 6 p.m. on Thursday, this is the European computer model now, that the center of circulation is going to be almost due south of New Orleans, moving in a northwesterly direction with most of its heavy rain on its southern side. Now, that's a little odd, but sometimes that does happen. It's also saying that as we get into 6 p.m. on Friday, that this system is going to be getting closer to making landfall, and then making landfall sometime in the late Friday through Saturday time frame in parts of Louisiana. Notice where it's putting the heaviest of rain. It's putting the heavy rain over parts of Mississippi and Louisiana, and it's not giving us much rain. So I can't emphasize this enough. If the center goes in near New Orleans, like the European model and some of the other computer models are saying, most of the effects of the storm will be to the east. If it does jog a little bit farther to the west, we would have a better chance of seeing some of this heavy rain. By 6 p.m. on Sunday, the European model is saying the center of circulation is going to be near Monroe, Louisiana, with heavy rain over parts of Mississippi and Arkansas. That heavy rain is going to be moving to the north. Here's what the European computer model is basically saying about where the heaviest rain will fall. Again, Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee, and eventually up into parts of the Midwest, if the latest model is right. But the forecast remains uncertain, so we need to keep an eye on this system. Okay, since we're on Facebook Live, I'm sure a lot of people out there have questions about this situation. And Daniel, do you have anything from anybody out there?
So, David, what factors are we looking at tomorrow? Obviously, there is a lot of uncertainty at this moment, but what are we looking at tomorrow when we get the next update? Specifically, in terms of track? What are we looking at?
So why is tomorrow important? Tomorrow is important because the center of circulation is going to be out over the water. Tropical systems don't develop over land. They develop over very warm, moist water where you have a lot of evaporation going on. You've got the water out there. The temperatures are warm. You get a lot of evaporation when the water temperature is high. And water temperatures, when they're at or above 80 degrees, they're high enough to support a tropical system, a tropical storm or a hurricane. And since those water temperatures are in the middle and upper 80s, it's almost boiling out there. So tomorrow is a big day because the system is moving in a southwest direction. It'll be out over the water at that time, and it should begin to develop because it's going to be in a favorable area of development, and that basically means an area where the wind shear is low and where there is a lot of water out, a lot of warm water out there. So that is why tomorrow is a key day. Another reason why tomorrow is a key day is because the NOAA is going to fly some jets out there, fly through it and see the environment around the system and what's happening with the system. And we should get a better idea as we get into tomorrow evening, tomorrow night, once that data gets ingested into our computer model. So that will let us know where the system is going and give us a much better idea than what we have right now.
Kobos is asking, what are the chances this turns into a hurricane?
Okay, what are the chances it becomes a hurricane? Well, as early as a couple of days ago, we started alerting you that this thing had a chance of developing into a hurricane, and it was just a little scary yesterday as well because so many of the computer models were pointing it towards Southeast Texas. I would say it's a decently good chance that it will develop into a hurricane because the water out there is extremely warm and the wind shear is extremely low. So whenever you get a system, a circulation that moves into that situation, it has a good chance of development. And because there's so much of the northern Gulf of Mexico that has that favorable environment, that means it'll have more time to develop into a hurricane. Now, the key here is if the system goes in farther to the east, it might not be as strong as if it goes in farther to the west, say near the Sabine, because if it comes all the way to the Sabine before it makes landfall, it would have an even better chance of being a hurricane because it's going to spend more time over the water.
A lot of folks are concerned about if this trends west and the rain amounts that we might see, is flooding going to be a possibility for us if it should track west?
Well, certainly anytime you get a tropical system moving into your coastline, flooding is a possibility. It's really going to depend on where the center of circulation of this system goes. Worst case scenario is always when the center of circulation goes in just a little bit down the coast from you or to the west of you. So if the center of circulation were to say take a track towards maybe Sargent or Freeport, Texas, right about like that, then that would put the city of Houston and surrounding areas on the dirty side of the storm. So anytime you get a tropical storm or hurricane, the whole gist of it is you've got this warm water out there, you've got a storm developing over the top of that, you've got all this moisture that is being ingested by the storm, and that's what makes the rainfall rate so incredibly high. Now, based on what I've seen so far, this does not appear to be a stalling storm. So even if it were to come towards us here in Southeast Texas, we think the storm would keep moving. We don't think it's going to slow down and stop and drop 30 inches of rain on somebody. But anytime you get a tropical system coming in, a good 10 to 15 inches of rain is easily possible with it. So we will know more about its track as we get into tomorrow. Again, if the center goes over New Orleans or to the east, the heaviest of rain will be concentrated over there. If the center comes in farther west, say near the Sabine, near Port Arthur, near the Beaumont area, if it comes in there, of course, our chances for rain would go up. Most of it would probably still be on the eastern side of the viewing area. And of course, if it comes in even farther west over, say, Galveston or Freeport, then our chances for flooding will go way up from there.
So we've got Albert Pineda, who is going to Florida. We have some folks who say they're headed to Mississippi. What are the chances they might run into problems for their weekend travel plans?
Timing is the key with this situation. And I guess I want to go back and look at the European forecast model. We'll show that to them again. They were wondering about timing here. Here's Houston here. If they were, say, taking off first thing tomorrow morning going over there, they might not run into any major problems. But the longer they wait, the worse it's going to be. If they left tomorrow, they'd run into rainfall from New Orleans all the way to Florida, but it probably wouldn't be heavy enough to cause any major problems. If this particular computer model is right, they take off on Thursday, they're going to probably start to run into rain, say, around Lake Charles or so, and it'll be raining off and on all the way to Florida, but maybe not a major situation because the worst of the rain would still be offshore. If they wait until Friday, that's when the major problems could begin, because not only would you be dealing with heavy rain in this region to the east, but you'd be dealing with some strong wind as well, maybe even up to high-end tropical storm force, maybe even up to hurricane force. So that's a situation there. And then as we get into Saturday, I certainly wouldn't recommend traveling on Saturday from Houston over towards Florida, because no doubt you would run into a tremendous amount of rain and wind if you did that.
So this is actually reminiscent of T.J. Parker's story tonight. A lot of people moving into the Houston area since Harvey. Lupe Pineda is asking about the west side of a possible hurricane. Would Houston be okay if they fell on the west side?
Well, the west side is the place to be when it comes to tropical systems. And the reason why is you typically have a lot more rain on the east side because the wind rotates around tropical systems counterclockwise. So in the case of the Gulf Coast here, you've got a storm coming in off of the Gulf of Mexico. All the moisture is coming off of the Gulf on the east side of the circulation, so along the circulation's path and just to the east. If you're to the west of the circulation, notice how the wind is an offshore wind. Okay, so that's much drier. So you have moisture coming in over here. It's basically being rained out. So by the time that by the time the wind gets over here, well, that's somewhat of a drier wind, and you typically don't have much rain. We call that the clean side of the storm. So here's the center of circulation right about there. If this computer model is right, I want to make sure I say that. Saturday at 6 p.m., if it is located here, say just to the west of New Orleans, you drive from the eye or the center of circulation, you drive about 70 or 80 miles or so, and you're going to completely drive out of the rain. You're going to completely, for the most part, get out of the really strong wind. So the west side is the place to be when it comes to these tropical systems.
Kelly is asking another travel question. She is in Orlando right now. She is planning to drive back to Houston on Sunday. Does Sunday pose a problem for Kelly?
Let's go ahead and advance this. Okay, this is Sunday at 6 p.m. This is one of our more reliable computer models, okay? If this model is right and the center of circulation at 6 p.m. is right about here, well, during the early parts of the day, certainly on Sunday, that would be a pretty treacherous trip there, because you stand a chance of running into some of the core rains with the system. You also stand a chance of running into some of these feeder bands. Those feeder bands can be quite intense with the rain. And typically to the east of the center, wherever it comes in, these thunderstorms out here on the fringe not only pose a heavy rain threat, but they pose a tornado threat as well. So I don't think Sunday is a good day to travel from Florida. I think Monday would be a much better day.
So obviously with the uncertainty currently, what times what times can we expect updates tomorrow? Okay,
National Hurricane Center is putting out updates about every 6 hours or so. We just got the 7 p.m. update a little while ago. They'll put another one out just after midnight coming up tonight, and then we'll get another one just before Good Morning America first thing tomorrow morning. So we're getting updates right now about every 6 hours. If the system were to become a named storm, we would get updates about every 3 hours or so. And so we're really waiting until tomorrow, and in particular tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening. That is when the center will be over water. That's when most likely the hurricane hunters are going to fly into the system. That's when our computer models should have a better handle on where this thing is going to go. So I think tomorrow is a pivotal day. You wait until tomorrow afternoon, you see what the weather's going to do, and you begin to make your plans accordingly. What you probably shouldn't wait until tomorrow to do is to prepare for the storm, because the closer you get to the storm, things get hectic, and you run out of time. Almost every time we get one of these, you run out of time. So best thing to do is start to prepare right now. Check the weather throughout the day coming up for tomorrow. By this time tomorrow, we should have some pretty good information for you, some more definite information. It should be less uncertain than what it is right now.
What kind of preparedness tips would you give folks right now based on what you're seeing?
Well, right now, the stuff that we've been saying all along that you typically should do at the beginning of hurricane season, you want to prepare a hurricane kit. And if you go to your local Kroger store, we've got a hurricane tracking maps over there that you can look at on the back side of there and see how to prepare a hurricane kit. I've been preaching about this for the last couple of days. One of the things you want to make sure that you have in that kit are your important documents and pictures backed up, because so many times people lose those sorts of things in tropical storms. If you're on prescription medication, you want to make sure that you check on that and get that together. And then some of the stuff that you want to do is, just in case this whole thing shifts west and then wind and rain should happen to come directly towards southeast Texas, you want to know where you would go if you live in a storm surge zone. It's not completely out of the possibility, if this system were to go due west, make it all the way to the upper Texas coast, that we could be dealing with a Category 1 hurricane on our hands. That would be strong enough to produce some sort of storm surge, and some people would be asked to leave at that point. So if you live in an area where you're susceptible to storm surge flooding, and you're asked to evacuate, you want to already have those plans in place, a relative or somebody that lives a little farther inland away from the water.
David, we have a number of people who are just rejoining us. This might be maybe a good time to just recap what you have learned from the 7 p.m. update. Okay,
so let's start things over, and we'll go right to the beginning and just go through this thing one more time and show everybody what we're seeing. By the way, here is the 10-day forecast, and we're most concerned about Saturday and Sunday with this particular system, if it should happen to come in our direction, and then after that, things will begin to calm down. But let's start from the top here, and let me show you the latest information that we have. What we know right now, formation odds are at 90%. The track remains uncertain until the development occurs, and it's uncertain because the center is still over land. Again, we'll have more information tomorrow. Hurricane hunters are going to fly this thing tomorrow afternoon, most likely, if we begin to see some activity around the center of circulation. And the latest models are showing the heaviest rainfall to the east of Texas, but we continue to say don't let your guard down just yet, because if the system were to take more of a westward track, well, that would bring some heavy rain right into southeast Texas. So here's where the center of circulation is located, southwest of Tallahassee. Here's what the latest computer models are saying is what's going to happen. National Hurricane Center thinks this area here in the red hatched areas where development would most likely occur, and they're saying there's a 90% probability of that happening over the next couple of days. This hatched area has been pushed a little bit farther to the east, so that makes me feel a little bit better about southeast Texas, but we're still not off the hook just yet, because again, if the storm makes a track somewhat like that, then we would certainly see some wind and rain here in southeast Texas. And finally, here is a look at those tropical computer models. The latest run, these are the most reliable models. Some of them are as far east as Mississippi and Alabama. Some of them say the center is going to come in very close to New Orleans, but the rest of them are saying that the system is going to come in somewhere over parts of Louisiana. and as far west as, say, Jefferson County there and up into the Beaumont area. Now, that's where the center of circulation is forecast to go according to the latest computer models. And the important thing to know here is that the storm is not just around the center. These storms can be rather large. Their effects could be rather widespread. So they could affect the area as far west as Houston and most of southeast Texas if the center does come in, say, a little bit farther to the west. So that's basically what we have for you right now. We're going to have the updated information coming up tonight on Eyewitness News at 10. And make sure you wake up first thing tomorrow morning with Travis and Alita. Look at the latest satellite images to see when that system begins to move out over the Gulf of Mexico, if we're starting to get thunderstorms developing around it. If that happens as soon as tomorrow morning, then we are most certainly going to be dealing with a formidable system that would most likely affect the areas to the east of us, but could still affect the area here in southeast Texas. We'll know more tomorrow, so pay attention to the forecast. We'll see you then.